there. I'm Kel Kidman. Welcome to Breaking on the Daily, where today we begin with Biden's coronavirus advisor saying a 4 to 6 week lockdown is necessary in the U.S. to revive the economy and lower cases? Huh? Okay, I've already talked about before about the fact that lockdowns don't make any sense for actually lowering cases, as what they do is they limit the amount of spaces that someone could potentially be in, thus increasing the chances that people are next to each other, being absolutely contrary to the idea of social distancing. But what? Revive the economy? That's not how this works. I think we've set up a fairly clear dichotomy in the minds of most people, even those who are pro-lockdown, in that people believe that lockdowns equals less cases, but a worse economy, because that's fairly obvious. But this guy is baffling. This article is just insane. And you know, this is a fairly regular thing for a lot of Democrats and things like that. You have a lot of this sort of thing going on. Just, man, that is a baffling claim. Oh, we need to lock down the economy to save the economy. Man, what? No. It's just insane. And here's a quote from the guy. Quote, "We could pay for a package right now to cover all wages, lost wages for individual workers, for losses to small companies and medium-sized companies, for cities, states, county governments. We could do all of that." We spent $6 trillion on the first round of COVID relief. That barely covered anything. Half the people didn't get the COVID checks. Half the businesses that qualified for the small business loans did not get their small business loans because it simply wasn't enough. This guy is suggesting that we cover everyone's wages for 4 to 6 weeks, that we cover all the losses for all of the small and medium-sized companies in the country for 4 to 6 weeks, and at the same time, bail out all the terribly run blue states. Oh, man. This takes a special kind of know-nothing about the economy to make this sort of claim. I cannot believe this is the level of economic complete incompetence that we're already seeing from the Biden administration. But of course, we're all expected that. But another interesting COVID story that we also have is Cuomo has skipped 17 White House meetings about COVID-19 vaccines. Ever since June, he hasn't gone to one. It's just... And he also denied a meeting with the Health and Human Services Secretary, Alex Azar. Okay, is it clear enough to you yet that these people aren't actually taking the virus seriously? That all of this is just a ploy? All of it's just something that they want to say as a power grab? That all they want to do is take away your freedom? They're not really interested at all in actually solving the problem? Because if Andrew Cuomo was actually interested in solving the problem, even if he thought that the Trump administration was not doing everything that they could with regard to the vaccine trials and all that sort of thing, he still should have been going to the meetings because he needed the information. Having more information is good, even if you don't know if all the information is entirely accurate. Because look, you don't go... for someone like me, for instance, I still go to The Guardian. I still go and look at CNN. I still go and look at Fox News, despite the fact I know they're going to be giving me a lot of nonsense, and I'm not going to be able to get a lot out of them. But I still go there. The reason being, because I want to know what they're talking about. I want to know what they're saying. I want to know what information they have that maybe I don't have. I want to know all of these things so that I can either effectively counterattack their arguments, or I can debunk their articles with my own information, or all that sort of thing, because there's a lot of people who are getting their information from CNN. There are a lot of people who are getting their information from The Guardian. And similarly, with regard to Andrew Cuomo, a lot of people were getting information from the White House with regard to the COVID vaccine. But he refused the meetings. And this is, by the way, this is around the same time, or no, it was a few months beforehand, I think, he started talking a few months after this. Sorry, that he started talking about how he didn't like how the Trump was doing the vaccine trials, and how he was essentially going full anti-vaxxer around, I think it was September or October. Oh man, just once again, it's fairly clear they don't care. They don't care about these sort. They don't care about COVID. Okay, they don't care. It's all a power grab to them. All right. You still trust them? You still trust them after this? You shouldn't. It's fairly clear. They are not your friends. They're not. They're not your friends. They're not here to say, "Oh, we want to help you with this whole COVID thing." But to go on to someone who actually does kind of care, and the most Chad governor in the country currently, Ron DeSantis pushes for expansion of Stand Your Ground law as a part of anti-mob crackdown. Oh, this is beautiful. So essentially what this law allows is that if someone's doing crap, like they're going around looting, or they're being generally belligerent and a part of a huge mob, then it is, given certain circumstances, okay to shoot them. This is a good thing, okay? I'm always for expanding Stand Your Ground laws. And people will say, oh, it's property crime. Yeah, literally everything's property crime, or at least every legitimate crime is property crime. Because the fact of the matter is, fundamentally, at the core of our society, we believe that you own yourself, that you are your own property. So if someone attempting to murder you or maim you or that sort of thing is still fundamentally a property crime. It is still fundamentally destroying the property of your body, because we kind of have an understanding, at least in Western culture, that you are not fundamentally your body. You are, whether it is your soul or your mind or that sort of thing. We believe that sort of thing in the Western culture. That's a basic understanding that we have. And we believe, thus, that we own our own bodies, thus we own the labor of our own bodies, and are able to then sell it on an open market because we own it. And that's the fundamental idea of capitalism in a lot of ways. So this is great stride. All right, we should be having this all over the country. Of course, this is less necessary in red states because, well, red states are able to actually track down on riots and that sort of thing more easily and do it more effectively than in blue states. I mean, in Utah there was a bit of it, especially up in Salt Lake and such, but mostly we cracked down on it pretty good. I think there was one day down here in St. George where I live where there was actually a protest, and it was kind of annoying because it affected my commute, but other than that, it wasn't really a big deal. I mean, they just kind of stood around in a street and then walked down the street. That was pretty much all that happened. I mean, they were all a bunch of weirdos, but whatever. And, that was my personal experience of the matter. But something interesting, and something I haven't been covering entirely, but a very interesting story that's been going on for pretty much ever since the election. The left wing and more moderate wings of the Democratic Party, though in this case it's not really, I guess you could call them the leftist communist wing of the Democratic Party versus the corporatist shill wing of the Democrat Party, have been in a catfight for the past week. And in the latest of they've been going back and forth where the more moderate corporate shill wing will say, you're too far left, you made it so that no one wanted to vote for us. And then the left wing will retort back, but you're rich! And this is in the you're rich category. And this is a headline from the Daily Mail. Left-wing Dems blame Nancy Pelosi's refrigerator filled with $12 a pint ice cream in her multi-million-dollar home for putting off ordinary Americans voting Democrat. Ugh. Really? Do you really think anyone cares? I mean, that's what I kind of have to ask. Do you really think anyone cares? I mean, they voted for Donald Trump in 2016. That's all that you really need to know. They voted for a billionaire, okay? I mean, why would they care particularly about the fact that Nancy Pelosi eats good ice cream? Or expensive ice cream? Who cares? I mean, I think it's funny because it's hypocritical. I think it's funny because she'll talk a big talk about income inequality and that sort of thing. I think it's a problem in that sense, but only in that it's hypocritical. I don't really have a problem with it as it is. It's like, okay, whatever, she's rich, I don't care. That's my opinion of it, at least. But this is a fun story for me because it's fun to see the Democrat just eat themselves alive. It's really fun. So yeah, I suggest you keep looking into this story, and I'm gonna keep looking into this story. Have some fun seeing me talk about it like every day for the next week or so, depending on how long this story goes on for. It's beautiful. So, to go on into the main election news, the presidential election news, we've had a few leaks. Oh, and by leaks, I mean anonymous sources saying nonsense. And this is from the Daily Mail, though I think it was originally reported by either the New York Times or someone. They say Trump aides are certain legal challenges won't change election results, and claim president has resigned himself to losing, but keeping up a show for supporters while shutting intelligence meetings. Now, this is kind of an interesting story, especially since, just like an hour ago, or an hour or two ago, I forget. From Giuliani, 650,000 votes were counted unlawfully in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. That's interesting, because I could have sworn that 650,000 votes would have been more than enough to change the result of the election. You might say that 650,000 votes is around 10 times or more the actual difference, the difference like that could be made in Pennsylvania. It's almost as though all this was nonsense. Yeah. By the way, that was from the Epoch Times, one of the best news sources currently available, as they are entirely being principled on the matter of the presidential election. If you've seen their election map, it is a thing of beauty. It is actually accurate. It's wonderful. And I should have it up on the screen around right now. But, man, the story is insane. Because here's the thing. They aren't alleging, to be clear, they aren't alleging that 650,000 people voted illegitimately. Or that they voted in a fraudulent manner. That the people voted fraudulently. What's being claimed specifically is that they were counted unlawfully, which is a much easier thing to prove. Because you see, it's a very interesting thing. The Republicans, specifically the Trump team, has been doing a wonderful kind of propaganda campaign where they've been saying fraud, informally in a bunch of tweets and all those sorts of things for a week now. But in their actual lawsuits, they aren't alleging fraud. What they're alleging is rather impropriety on the part of the people who are managing the elections, which is much easier to prove, especially in Philadelphia, especially in Pennsylvania, where we know Josh Shapiro, with one of the most insane tweets of the presidential election, as I've already talked about before. I talked about this on the day of election. He tweeted that that Trump could not win in Pennsylvania. That's going to be bad in court, because that's evidence of motive. It's evidence of something. I mean, if you get a judge, it's like, hey, here are all of these improprieties. Here's all of these things that are happening, and here's Josh Shapiro himself saying it was impossible for us to win. It almost sounds as if this impropriety was done on purpose. It will be so easy to prove. And in this case, what they're actually alleging, specifically, in both Philadelphia and Michigan, they've been doing this. And Philadelphia, you have the biggest number, at least at this point. They're alleging that mail-in ballots, and particularly mail-in ballots which were cured, were treated unequally as compared to election day ballots. Because if you fill out a ballot on election day and you fill it out incorrectly, you can't fix it, all right? You're probably already left by the time it would even be caught. But for mail-in ballots, you can send in an incorrectly filled out ballot, and then if they can look at it, they can figure it out. And then when they figure it out, they'll send it back to you. It's like, hey, can you fix this? Can you cure your ballot? And they'll tell you that you can cure your ballot. And the argument that the Trump campaign is making, and this is an argument based on Bush v. Gore, based on the 14th Amendment, based on the Equal Protection Clause, that they can't they can't do that because it means that ballots are being treated unequally. And that's actually a fairly strong argument, and I think it's going to actually do some real damage, because really they only need Pennsylvania and Michigan to flip, really. And then and then Arizona to flip, and Georgia and North Carolina to say Trump. It's kind of a Hail Mary, but I think it's going to work. I frankly think it's going to work because there's a lot of things going on. There's constantly evidence coming out. You need to be looking at the Epoch Times. They have right at the top of their website. They have exactly what is happening in every one of the contested states. It's wonderful. They're actually. I only recently started reading them, and they're really good. They're really good. I really do suggest you go and read them. And on top of that, you also have more election impropriety claims. GOP Michigan poll watchers swear they incurred intimidation and threats of assault. Man. I mean, we keep getting more and more of this. The poll watchers thing has been completely ridiculous because I think it was specifically Michigan where they were ordered by the court. It was either Michigan or Pennsylvania. I think it was Michigan, where they were ordered by a court to actually. They had to have poll watchers within 6 feet of the tallying of the ballots. They need to be within 6 feet. But the Michigan election officials just said no. And instead kept them away, like 20 feet away, 20, 30 feet away, where they had to use binoculars to actually get any useful information. And even then, as anyone would know, if you're trying to look at something that small, try to look at someone from 30 feet away, like looking at a piece of paper and signing a piece of paper or doing something with a piece of paper. I mean, unless it's a huge poster board, you're not going to be seeing a whole lot of what's actually going on. I mean, you're too far away. Even if you have really good eyesight, that's kind of a tall order to be like 30 feet away. But and so what might end up happening in Michigan is you might have a bunch of these ballots that were counted during those times saying, yeah, that was an unlawful counting. You can't do that. And since you've already removed all of the security measures that could have been challenged by poll watchers, and instead you only have the ballots, well, we have to throw all these ballots out. And it is worrying in a sense that if all of these challenges work, which I think they are legitimate challenges that may work and that may have a whole lot of substantiation behind them and need to work in order for us to have a legitimate election. The countermeasure, the counter to it, what is going to happen after it, is kind of worrying as well. The reason being that if all of these election challenges go through, you have potentially millions of ballots that get invalidated, not for any fault of the people who actually voted, but because the election officials were being corrupt. And you know what? It's going to be blamed on the Trump campaign, despite the fact that it doesn't have anything to do with them. Because here's the fact of the matter. When you have election fraud, when you're when you have election impropriety, when the election officials are doing things unlawfully, they're the ones at fault for anything that happens afterwards. Whether it be a fraudulent election because you prevented all these security measures from happening and made it so that there was a whole bunch of fraudulent ballots that got counted, and that stays through and you get an illegitimate president that way, or all of the illegitimate ballots that were counted improperly get thrown out because you can't differentiate between the legitimate ballots that were counted in that time or the illegitimate ballots that were counted in that time. All of those get thrown out, and you once again get a potentially illegitimate president. It's scary, okay? It is scary. Because here's the thing. The people who were controlling these elections, the Josh Shapiros, and the like, those people are the ones who should be blamed, but they won't be. The ones who will be blamed if this election result gets reversed, if Donald Trump becomes president, will be Donald Trump. They will claim he stole the election because he pointed out that all of these people were doing improprietous things, and all of their actions got a whole bunch of ballots invalidated. And once he points, and for simply pointing that out, and for simply saying, hey, this is wrong, and you need to throw all these things out because we have no other option, he's going to be blamed. And you know what it's going to do? It's going to illegitimize his second presidency. And Razorfist said this. And I think it was one of the most prophetic things about the whole election fraud thing. He said, this isn't about preventing a second term of Trump. It's about illegitimizing his second term. And I think that's right. And I think I'm going to leave you there with that. Because this has been Breaking on the Daily. I'm Kel Kidman, and I'm out.